Jake Rodriguez wiped down the bar counter for what felt like the 100th time that evening. The Cosmic Corner wasn't exactly the busiest place in downtown Portland. Especially on a Tuesday night in March, rain tapped against the windows, and the neon signs outside cast colorful shadows across the empty tables. At 38 years old, Jake had been mixing drinks at this same spot for 15 long years. He knew every scratch on the wooden bar, every loose tile on the floor, and exactly which bar stool made that annoying squeaking sound when someone sat on it. Most people would call his life boring, but Jake found comfort in the routine. Wake up, open the bar, serve drinks, close up, go home, repeat. The Cosmic Corner had always been different from other bars in the city. The previous owner had decorated it with space-themed artwork, hanging model rockets from the ceiling, and painting murals of distant galaxies on the walls. Customers either loved it or thought it was completely ridiculous. Jake had grown to appreciate the quirky atmosphere over the years. Tonight was particularly quiet. Only two regular customers sat at the far end of the bar, nursing their beers and arguing about whether aliens actually existed. Jake had heard this same conversation probably 1,000 times. Portland attracted all kinds of interesting people, and many of them ended up at his bar sooner or later. "Hey Jake, can you make me something new?" called out Tommy, one of the regulars. "I'm getting tired of the same old beer every night." Jake looked around the bar and noticed something unusual. Earlier that day, while cleaning, he had found a small bottle tucked behind some old liquor bottles on the highest shelf. The bottle was unlike anything he had ever seen before. It was made of some kind of dark material that seemed to change color when he moved it around. Inside was a liquid that looked almost like liquid silver, but with tiny sparkles that seemed to dance around on their own. He had no idea where the bottle came from. Maybe the previous owner had left it there, or perhaps some customer had forgotten. Years ago, Jake had been curious about it all day, wondering what it might be. It didn't have any label or markings that he could understand. "You know what, Tommy? Let me try something completely new tonight," Jake said, feeling a spark of creativity he hadn't experienced in months. He started with ingredients he knew well. First, he poured some elderflower liqueur into a tall glass. The sweet, floral scent filled the air around him. Next, he added a splash of blue curare, watching as the liquid turned a beautiful ocean blue color. Then he added a pinch of activated charcoal powder, something he used occasionally to create dramatic black cocktails for customers who wanted something Instagram-worthy. But tonight felt different. Jake found himself reaching for that mysterious bottle he had discovered earlier. His hand seemed to move on its own as he carefully added 3 drops of the strange, shimmering liquid to the mixture. The moment the unknown liquid hit the other ingredients, something incredible happened. The entire drink began to glow with a soft, pulsing light. It wasn't just reflecting the bar lights above. The liquid itself seemed to be producing its own illumination. Tiny points of light swirled round inside the glass like miniature stars in a cosmic dance. "Oh," Tommy whispered, his eyes wide with amazement. "What did you just make?" Jake stared at the drink in his hands, completely mesmerized. In all his years of bartending, he had never seen anything like this. The liquid seemed alive, constantly moving and changing, creating patterns that were almost hypnotic to watch. It was beautiful and mysterious, like looking at a piece of the night sky, trapped in a glass. "I honestly have no idea," Jake admitted, still staring at his creation. "I just mixed some stuff together, and this happened." The drink seemed to pulse with a rhythm all its own, and Jake could swear he felt a slight warmth coming from the glass, even though he hadn't heated any of the ingredients. The other customers in the bar had noticed the unusual glow and were starting to gather around to see what Jake had created. Just as Jake was about to taste the drink himself, the front door of the bar opened with a soft chime. 3 people walked in, but something about them immediately seemed off. They were all unusually tall, probably close to 7 feet each, with very pale skin that almost seemed to have a slight blue tint under the bar lights. Their hair was completely white, not like elderly people, but a pure, almost silvery white that seemed to shine. They wore identical dark suits that looked expensive but somehow didn't quite fit right, as if they weren't used to wearing earth clothing. Their movements were graceful but stiff, like they were being very careful about every step they took. The strangest thing about them was their eyes. They were larger than normal human eyes, in a pale gray color that seemed to reflect light like mirrors. When they looked around the bar, they moved their heads in perfect synchronization, as if they were all connected somehow. Jake felt a chill run down his spine, but he pushed the feeling aside. He had seen all kinds of unusual customers over the years. Portland was full of eccentric people, street performers, and folks who just liked to dress differently. These three were probably just some kind of performance artists, or maybe people heading to a costume party. "Good evening," the one in the middle said in a voice that sounded perfectly normal, though there was something slightly mechanical about the way he spoke. "We would like to order drinks, please." "Of course," Jake replied, trying to act natural despite feeling oddly nervous. "What can I get you?" The three strangers looked at each other, then back at Jake. Their eyes seemed to focus on the glowing drink still sitting on the bar counter. The moment they saw it, their entire demeanor changed completely. All three of them froze in place, staring at the drink with expressions of absolute shock and disbelief. Their pale faces somehow became even paler, and Jake could see their hands beginning to shake slightly. "Is that?" the middle one began, his voice barely above a whisper. "It cannot be," said the one on the left, his voice filled with awe. "But it is," whispered the third, and then, to Jake's complete amazement, all three of them slowly dropped to their knees right there on the floor of his bar. Jake stood there holding the glowing drink, completely confused and starting to feel genuinely concerned. "Hey, are you guys okay? Do you need me to call someone?" The three kneeling figures began speaking in hushed tones, but not in English. The language sounded like nothing Jake had ever heard before, musical and flowing, with sounds that seemed almost impossible for human vocal cords to produce. Tommy and the other customers were now staring in complete bewilderment at the scene unfolding in front of them. One person quietly pulled out their phone and started recording, while another began backing toward the exit. Jake looked down at the strange drink in his hands, then at the three people kneeling on his floor, and realized that his ordinary Tuesday night had just become anything but ordinary. Something told him that his quiet, predictable life as a bartender was about to change forever, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for whatever was coming next. Jake stood there holding the glowing drink, watching three tall strangers kneel on his bar floor while speaking in a language that sounded like singing mixed with wind chimes. His heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. After 15 years of serving drinks to every kind of person imaginable, nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Okay, this is getting really weird," Tommy whispered from his bar stool, his beer forgotten as he stared at the scene. "Should we call the police or something?" Before Jake could answer, the stranger in the middle slowly stood up. His movements were smooth and careful, like he was afraid of startling everyone in the room. When he spoke, his voice was calm but filled with an emotion Jake couldn't quite identify. "Please forgive our reaction," the tall man said, his pale gray eyes fixed on the drink in Jake's hands. "We did not expect to encounter something so sacred in this place." Jake looked down at the glowing cocktail, then back at the three visitors. "Sacred? It's just a drink I mixed together. I mean, it looks pretty cool with all the glowing and stuff, but I wouldn't call it sacred." The three strangers exchanged glances that seemed to communicate volumes without words. The one who had been speaking reached into his dark suit jacket and pulled out what looked like a small, silver device shaped like a seashell. When he touched it, the device began to emit a soft humming sound. "My name is Dr. Kale," he said, and suddenly his voice sounded different, more natural, less mechanical. "This device helps me speak your language more clearly. What I am about to tell you may be difficult to believe." Jake set the glowing drink down on the bar counter, where it continued to pulse with its mysterious light. "At this point, I'm pretty much ready to believe anything. Who are you people?" Dr. Kale took a deep breath, which somehow seemed like an effort for him. "We are not from your world. We come from a planet you would call Zephyr, Located in what your astronomers know as the Andromeda Galaxy. We have been visiting Earth quietly for many of your decades, studying your culture and learning from your people. Tommy nearly fell off his bar stool. You're telling us you're aliens, like actual space aliens? That is correct, said the woman on the left. Her voice now also clearer thanks to the translation device. My name is Dr. Luna. We are part of a peaceful exploration mission. Jake felt like the room was spinning around him. He gripped the edge of the bar counter to steady himself. This has to be some kind of joke. You guys are actors or something, right? Someone hired you to prank me. The third visitor, who introduced himself as Dr. Astor, stepped forward and held up his hand. Jake watched in complete amazement as the man's palm began to glow with the same soft light. As the drink he had created, objects around the bar, salt shakers, napkins, even Tommy's beer bottle, slowly began to rise into the air and float in perfect circles around the room. This is not a joke, Dr. Astor said gently, as he carefully lowered all the floating objects back to their original positions. We possess abilities that your science does not yet understand. Jake's legs felt weak, and he had to sit down on the stool behind the bar. Everything he thought he knew about the world was crumbling around him. Okay, let's say I believe you. Why are you here? And why did you react like that to my drink? Dr. Kale pointed to the glowing cocktail with reverence. That drink you created is identical to something we call the essence of transcendence. It is the most sacred beverage in our entire civilization, used in our most important religious ceremonies for over 10,000 years. But that's impossible, Jake protested. I just mixed some random stuff together. I found that weird bottle earlier today and decided to try it out. Dr. Luna's eyes widened when she heard this. You found a bottle? Can you describe it? Jake reached under the bar and pulled out the mysterious container he had discovered that morning. The moment the three visitors saw it, they all gasped in unison. This contains concentrated essence from the sacred grove of our home planet. Dr. Kale explained, his voice filled with awe. One of our research scouts must have accidentally left it here months ago. We searched everywhere for it. So you're saying I accidentally used alien ingredients? Jake asked, looking at the bottle with new respect and a little fear. Not just any ingredients. Dr. Astor said, the sacred grove produces fruit only once, every 100 years. The essence you used is incredibly rare and precious to our people. But that is not the most remarkable part. Dr. Luna stepped closer to the bar. The recipe for the essence of transcendence was lost to our people over 1,000 years ago. Only fragments of the formula remained in our oldest texts. Yet somehow, you recreated it perfectly using earth ingredients combined with our sacred essence. Jake shook his head in disbelief. I'm just a bartender. I mix drinks for a living. There's nothing special about me. Perhaps, Dr. Kale said thoughtfully, but consider this. Out of all the billions of people on your planet, you were the one who found our lost essence. You were the one who instinctively knew how to combine it with your earth ingredients to recreate our most sacred drink. Some might call that destiny. Tommy, who had been listening to everything with his mouth hanging open, finally found his voice. So what happens now? Are you going to take Jake to your spaceship or something? Dr. Luna smiled, and for the first time, she looked almost human. We do not wish to take anyone anywhere against their will, but we would very much like to learn from Jake and perhaps share some of our knowledge with him in return. Other members of our community are already on their way here, Dr. Astor added. Word travels quickly among our people when something this significant happens. By tomorrow, many more will come to meet the human who recreated our lost sacred drink. Jake looked around his small, quiet bar and tried to imagine it filled with visitors from another planet. The idea was both terrifying and exciting at the same time. His boring, predictable life was definitely over. But he had no idea what was going to replace it. I need another drink, Tommy muttered, reaching for his beer with shaking hands. Make that two, Jake agreed, realizing that his simple Tuesday night had just become the beginning of something that would change everything forever. 2 weeks had passed since that strange Tuesday night, and Jake's world had turned completely upside down. What used to be a quiet neighborhood bar was now the center of something he never could have imagined. Every morning when he unlocked the front door of the Cosmic Corner, he half expected to wake up from what had to be the most vivid dream of his life. But it wasn't a dream. The proof was right there in front of him every single day. The basement of his bar, which used to be nothing more than a storage room filled with old kegs and cleaning supplies, had somehow been transformed into something that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Dr. Kale had explained that they used something called spatial expansion technology, but Jake still couldn't wrap his head around how small. The basement had become a vast underground complex that seemed to stretch for miles. Through the basement entrance, Jake could see dozens of the tall, pale visitors from Zephyr moving around in their flowing robes, conducting what looked like important meetings and ceremonies. They had arrived throughout the past 2 weeks, coming in small groups during the night when fewer humans would notice them. The strangest part wasn't even the advanced technology, or the fact that aliens were living underneath his bar. The strangest part was how they all looked at him. Every single one of them treated Jake like he was some kind of religious figure. They would bow their heads when he walked by, speak to him in hushed, respectful tones, and bring him gifts that he couldn't even begin to understand. Yesterday, Dr. Luna had presented him with what she called a crystal from their home planet's core. It was beautiful, but Jake had no idea what he was supposed to do with it. Jake, there are some people here to see you, called out his part-time employee, Danny, from the front of the bar. Danny was the only person Jake had trusted enough to tell about the situation, and even then, he had only believed it after seeing the aliens for himself. Jake looked up from the inventory he was trying to complete and saw 3 people in dark suits standing by the entrance. Unlike his alien visitors, these were definitely human, and they had the serious expressions of people who weren't here for a friendly chat. Government? Jake asked Danny quietly. That would be my guess, Danny replied, wiping down glasses with slightly shaking hands. Even after 2 weeks, he still got nervous around anything related to the whole alien situation. The woman in the center of the group stepped forward and showed Jake an official-looking badge. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm Agent Patricia Wilson with a special government task force. We need to talk. Jake had been expecting this visit for days. Word was spreading. Despite everyone's efforts to keep things quiet, a few customers had posted videos online before Jake could ask them not to, and while most people thought they were fake, some very serious people had started paying attention. I figured you guys would show up eventually, Jake said, setting down his clipboard. Want some coffee? I have a feeling this is going to be a long conversation. Agent Wilson looked around the bar, taking in the space-themed decorations and the subtle changes that had occurred over the past 2 weeks. The lighting seemed different now, softer and more colorful, thanks to some modifications the Zephyrians had made to help them feel more comfortable. Mr. Rodriguez, we're aware that you've been in contact with non-human entities, she said directly. We need to understand the nature of this contact and assess any potential risks to national security. Before Jake could answer, Dr. Kale appeared from the basement entrance. His translation device was active, and he moved with the graceful dignity that Jake had come to associate with all the Zephyrians. Agent Wilson, Dr. Kale said politely, we have been expecting your arrival. We wish to establish peaceful and cooperative relations with your government. The 3 government agents stared at Dr. Kale with expressions that Jake recognized. It was the same look of shock and disbelief he had worn 2 weeks ago when he first encountered the aliens. This is Dr. Kale, Jake explained, feeling weird about making introductions between aliens and government agents in his own bar. He's been really helpful in explaining everything that's been happening. Over the next 3 hours, Jake found himself sitting at one of his own tables, listening to Dr. Kale explain their peaceful mission to Earth while government agents took notes and asked increasingly complex questions about alien technology, intentions, and capabilities. The hardest part for Jake wasn't dealing with the government agents or even the aliens. The hardest part was dealing with how his regular human life was falling apart. His girlfriend Lisa had broken up with him the week before, saying she couldn't handle the craziness that his life had become. She wasn't wrong. Jake barely slept anymore, partly because of stress and partly because the Zephyrians were naturally active during Earth's nighttime hours. His parents had called multiple times, worried about the strange rumors they were hearing about their son. Jake hadn't figured out how to explain that their bartender's son had accidentally become some kind of alien spiritual leader. How do you even start that conversation? Even worse, word had somehow spread beyond just the government and the Zephyrians. Jake had started receiving visits from human religious groups who believed he was some kind of prophet or chosen one. Yesterday, a group of people had gathered outside the bar holding signs and chanting prayers in languages Jake didn't recognize. The situation is becoming complex. Dr. Kale said to Jake after the government agents had finally left, "Our people on Zephyr have heard about what happened here. More of our species are requesting permission to visit Earth to meet you." Jake rubbed his tired eyes. "How many more are we talking about?" "Perhaps several hundred over the coming months," Dr. Kale admitted. "You have become something of a legend among our people, the human who restored our connection to the divine." "But I'm not divine," Jake protested, a frustration he had been feeling for weeks finally boiling over him. "I'm just a guy who mixed some ingredients together by accident. I don't know anything about religion or spirituality or being a bridge between species. I just want to serve drinks and live a normal life." Dr. Kell's pale gray eyes showed something that might have been sympathy. "In our culture, we believe that the most worthy individuals are often those who do not seek worthiness. Your humility and your desire to remain ordinary are seen as proof of your extraordinary nature." Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So the more I insist I'm not special, the more special you think I am. That's perfect. That's just perfect." The truth was, Jake was scared of the responsibility everyone seemed to want to place on his shoulders, scared of the attention from both humans and aliens, scared that his quiet, predictable life was gone forever, and he had no idea what was going to replace it. But perhaps most of all, he was scared that he might actually be starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was something special about what had happened that night after all. 3 months had passed since that first mysterious Tuesday night, and Jake thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. Standing in his bar at 6 in the morning, looking at the most impressive group of aliens he had ever encountered, he realized his strange journey was far from over. The Zephyrian High Council had arrived during the night in what could only be described as a magnificent spacecraft that somehow remained invisible to human satellites and radar. Dr. Kale had explained that the Council only left their home planet for the most important matters in their civilization's history. 5 incredibly tall beings stood before Jake, each wearing robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. Their leader, who introduced herself as High Counselor Vera, was at least 8 feet tall with silver hair that actually glowed in the dim bar lighting. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of thousands of years of wisdom. "Jake Rodriguez of Earth," she said, her translation device making her voice sound both ancient and timeless. "We have traveled across the galaxy to meet the one who has restored our lost sacred knowledge." Jake looked around his bar, which had been transformed once again overnight. The Zephyrians had created a ceremonial space with floating crystals, holographic displays showing star maps, and artifacts that looked like they belonged in a museum of alien history. The contrast between the cosmic ceremony and his simple Portland bar was almost comical. "Look, I really appreciate you coming all this way," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady despite feeling completely overwhelmed. "But I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not some kind of chosen one or prophet. I just got lucky with a drink recipe." High Counselor Vera exchanged glances with the other council members, and Jake could sense they were communicating in ways he couldn't understand. Finally, she nodded and stepped closer to him. "We have brought sacred texts and ceremonial artifacts from our homeworld," she explained. "If you are truly the bridge builder mentioned in our ancient prophecies, you will be able to recreate other lost drinks that were described in our oldest religious writings." Dr. Kale appeared at Jake's side, looking more nervous than Jake had ever seen him. The council has prepared 7 tests, he whispered. These are recipes that have been lost to our people for centuries. If you succeed, it will confirm your divine status. If you fail, what happens if I fail? Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Nothing harmful. High Counselor Vera assured him. We would simply understand that the first occasion was a fortunate accident, and we would be grateful for that blessing alone. Jake took a deep breath and looked at the expectant faces surrounding him. Behind the council members, he could see dozens of other Zephyrians who had gathered to witness the ceremony. Even Danny had arrived early and was watching from behind the bar with wide, amazed eyes. Okay, Jake said finally, let's do this. The first test involved creating something called the Dawn of Understanding, a drink that was supposed to help Zephyrian children develop their telepathic abilities. High Counselor Vera showed Jake an ancient text written in symbols that looked like a combination of musical notes and geometric patterns. Jake studied the symbols, trying to make sense of them. Somehow, looking at the ancient writing, he began to understand what ingredients might work. He started with a base of honey mead, added some lavender extract for calmness, and then found himself reaching for ingredients he had never used before. Things that Dr. Luna had brought from their expanded basement laboratory when he added 3 drops of what looked like liquid moonlight to the mixture. The drink began to shimmer with a soft, silver glow. The council members gasped in amazement, and Jake realized he had somehow succeeded with the first test. The second test was even more challenging. The Courage of the Void was supposed to be given to Zephyrian space travelers before they embarked on dangerous missions to unknown planets. This time, Jake found himself mixing ingredients that seemed to defy logic, combining things that should have been toxic together, but somehow created a drink that pulsed with golden energy. By the fourth test, Jake was starting to feel something strange happening inside his mind. It was as if the act of creating these ancient drinks was awakening knowledge he didn't know he possessed. His hands moved with confidence he had never felt before, selecting ingredients and combinations that made no logical sense but felt absolutely right. The Zephyrians watching the ceremony were becoming more and more excited. With each successful test, they whispered among themselves in their musical language, and Jake could feel their growing reverence even without understanding their words. But as he approached the 7th and final test, something inside Jake finally broke. Stop, he shouted, setting down the mixing glass with shaking hands. Just stop all of this. The entire room fell silent. High Counselor Vera looked at him with surprise, while the other council members seemed confused by his outburst. I can't do this anymore, Jake continued, his voice cracking with emotion. You want to know the truth? I have no idea how I'm doing any of this. I don't feel divine or chosen or special. I'm scared out of my mind every single day. I lost my girlfriend, my normal life, my peace of mind. I just want to go back to being a regular bartender who serves beer and takes complaints about sports games. Tears were streaming down Jake's face now. Months of suppressed fear and confusion finally pouring out. I'm not your bridge builder or your prophet or whatever you want me to be. I'm just a guy who accidentally mixed the right ingredients and got lucky. Please stop worshiping me. Please stop expecting miracles from me. I'm not worthy of any of this. Jake collapsed into a chair, exhausted by his emotional confession. He expected the council to be disappointed, maybe even angry that he had wasted their time and effort. Instead, something incredible happened. High Counselor Vera smiled, the first truly warm, genuine smile Jake had seen from any of the council members. She knelt down beside his chair, bringing her towering height closer to his level. Jake Rodriguez, she said softly, in all our centuries of studying divine wisdom, we have learned that the most enlightened beings are those who understand their own limitations. A false prophet would claim power and demand worship. A true bridge between worlds would reject such things and insist on being treated as an equal. She gestured to the other council members, who all nodded in agreement. Your humility, your refusal to accept worship, your honest admission of fear and uncertainty, these are not signs of unworthiness. They are the ultimate proof that you are exactly who our prophecies said you would be. Jake looked up at her through his tears, more confused than ever. So because I don't want to be your chosen one, that makes me your chosen one. Precisely, High Counselor Vera said with a gentle laugh, and that, Jake Rodriguez, is why our people will continue to follow you, whether you believe you deserve it or not. 6 months after that life-changing Tuesday night, Jake stood in his transformed bar and marveled at how much everything had changed, yet somehow found its way back to feeling like home again. The morning sun streamed through windows that now displayed a gentle rainbow effect, thanks to Zephyrian crystal technology that filtered light in ways that made both humans and aliens feel comfortable. The Cosmic Corner looked nothing like the quiet neighborhood bar it used to be, but it also didn't feel like the overwhelming alien shrine it had become during those chaotic middle months. Working together with Dr. Kale, High Counselor Vera, and even Agent Wilson from the government task force, Jake had found a way to create something entirely new. The official sign outside now read Cosmic Corner Cultural Exchange Center, and it had become Earth's first recognized meeting place between humans and visitors from other worlds. The basement had been expanded even further, creating proper facilities for the growing number of alien species who had begun visiting Earth. After hearing about Jake's story, "Morning, Jake," called out Dr. Luna as she emerged from the basement carrying a tray of what looked like floating blue spheres. "The delegation from Proxima is very excited to try your latest creation today." Jake smiled and waved back over the months he had learned to create ceremonial drinks for 7 different alien species, each with their own unique requirements and sacred traditions. But more importantly, he had learned to see himself not as their worshipped prophet, but as a cultural ambassador who happened to be really good at understanding what different beings needed in their beverages. The morning rush was always interesting now. Instead of just serving coffee to sleepy Portland residents, Jake found himself preparing morning energy drinks for tall gray Zephyrians, crystalline nutrient solutions for the rock-like Terrans, and various specialized concoctions for beings whose biology was completely different from anything on Earth. But the real magic happened when humans and aliens shared the same space. At a corner table, Jake could see Dr. Astor teaching a group of local college students about advanced mathematics, using holographic equations that floated in the air. Near the window, a Proxima engineer was collaborating with a human programmer on a project that would help both species better understand each other's technology. "Jake, there's someone here to see you," Danny called from the front entrance. Jake looked up and felt his heart skip a beat. Lisa, his ex-girlfriend, stood nervously by the door, looking around at the incredible scene with wide eyes. They hadn't spoken since she left 6 months ago, unable to handle the chaos that his life had become. Jake had missed her every single day, but he understood why she had to go. Back then, he hadn't even understood what was happening to his own life. "Hi," she said quietly as Jake approached. "I've been reading about this place in the news. They're calling it one of the most important developments in human history." "That might be a little dramatic," Jake replied with a nervous smile. "Want some coffee?" "It's still the same coffee you remember, even if everything else is different." They sat at a small table away from the more exotic activities happening around the bar. Lisa looked around, taking in the sight of humans and aliens working together, sharing meals, and having conversations that would have been impossible just months ago. "I owe you an apology," she said finally, "when all this started happening. I thought you were having some kind of breakdown. I couldn't understand what was real and what wasn't. I was scared." Jake reached across the table and gently touched her hand. "You don't need to apologize. I was scared too. I still am, sometimes. This whole thing is completely insane when you really think about it. But you figured it out," Lisa said, gesturing around the bustling cultural center. "You found a way to make it work. You created something amazing here. I had a lot of help," Jake admitted, "and I had to learn that I didn't need to be perfect or have all the answers. I just needed to be honest about who I am and what I can actually do." Dr. Kale approached their table, moving with the graceful respect he had maintained throughout their months of friendship. "Jake, The morning ceremony is ready to begin, but only if you are available. Give me 5 minutes, Jake replied. Dr. Kale nodded and returned to the group of mixed humans and aliens gathered near the ceremonial area. What's the morning ceremony? Lisa asked. Something we started a few months ago, Jake explained. Every morning, I create a special drink that represents cooperation between different species. It's not about worship or religion anymore. It's about bringing people together and celebrating what we can learn from each other. Jake stood up and moved behind the bar, where ingredients from dozens of different worlds were organized in a system that had taken him months to perfect. He began creating the morning's unity drink, combining earth honey with Zephyrian essence, Proximate crystal water, and Terran mineral supplements. As he worked, Jake noticed that everyone in the bar, human and alien alike, had gathered to watch, but their expressions weren't filled with religious awe anymore. Instead, they watched with the warm appreciation people show for a skilled craftsman doing something beautiful. When Jake finished, the drink glowed with a soft, multicolored light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the heartbeats of everyone present. He raised the glass in a toast to understanding. He said simply, to friendship. Dr. Kale added, to the future, Lisa said quietly. And Jake realized she was going to be okay with this new version of their life. As everyone in the bar shared the ceremonial drink, Jake looked around and realized he had found something he never expected. He was still just a bartender, still the same person who had mixed that first accidental drink 6 months ago. But now he was a bartender who helped beings from different worlds understand each other. The government had officially recognized the Cultural Exchange Center as Earth's primary contact point for interspecies relations. Scientists from around the world came to study and learn. Journalists documented the daily miracles of cooperation happening within these walls. But for Jake, the most important thing was much simpler. Every morning, he woke up knowing that his work brought different kinds of people together. Every evening, he went home tired but satisfied, knowing he had spent another day building bridges between worlds. His life wasn't normal anymore, and it never would be again. But it was his life, lived on his own terms, using his own skills to make something good happen in the universe. And sometimes, when he was mixing a particularly complex drink for a species he had never encountered before, Jake would remember that nervous Tuesday night when 3 tall strangers had walked into his quiet bar. He would smile, grateful for the accident that had changed everything, and proud of the person he had become in the process of learning to handle the impossible.